I know some of you are probably completely new to fiscal sponsorship, and then some of you maybe have done it before or have looked into it. From my perspective as a filmmaker and producer, I've actually worked with both Susi Walsh from Center for Independent Documentary and Laura, who's from the Filmmakers Collaborative. And I've worked with both of those organizations on fiscal sponsorship, actually, for different projects. And so I'm very excited to bring them in today to be able to speak to you about how they work with filmmakers, and especially New England filmmakers, on their projects. But from my perspective, fiscal sponsorship as a filmmaker is a way for us to be able to do a different kind of fundraising for our films. By partnership with a nonprofit organization, we become sort of part of, under their umbrella in a way, so that we can then apply for certain types of grants that require nonprofit status. We can also do fundraising campaigns that allow us to take tax-deductible donations. And that can be really helpful when you are, especially if you're doing a project that warrants that kind of fundraising. So do each of you, Laura and Susi, want to kind of give I know it's obviously a lot more complicated than that. So that's my perspective as a filmmaker. And I should say, I'm Michele Meek, the founder of NewEnglandFilm.com. So can each of you, maybe Laura, do you want to say from your perspective, what does it mean for you, and how does sort of Filmmakers Collaborative work with filmmakers on fiscal sponsorship?
Absolutely. So I think you covered a lot of it. We basically give you access to funding that you wouldn't otherwise have, not being a nonprofit yourself. So a lot of people are going through their projects, and they are, some people are deciding whether or not to become a nonprofit themselves to accept funds that way, and then sort of quickly find out what a hassle and an expense that is. And so a better, quicker route is to partner with a fiscal sponsor who will ultimately receive the funding for your project, keep their administrative fee, and then pass the rest on to you. But we are ultimately responsible to your donors that the money is being spent in the way they expect it to be. And so at Filmmakers Collaborative, we, if you have a project with, say you have a $500,000 budget, we ask anybody with a project, or if it's a $50,000 budget, we ask any project to send us a synopsis of it, a budget, and your bio. And we review all of those materials. And once we accept the project for fiscal sponsorship, that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to raise all of the funding with us. But it does mean. Hold on, sorry. I think.
Got it.
Okay. But it does mean that any funding that comes through us needs to be tracked separately in your budget from any other funding options you've been able to take advantage of. So that's sort of a general overview of how we work. Susi, right? Go, Susi.
Okay, so what's interesting about fiscal sponsorship is that all different organizations do it differently. We all have a different way of working, and there are, in fact, many different interpretations of a good way for you to move forward with fiscal sponsorship. So it is actually a very technical thing. It is a IRS has IRS oversight, and essentially it provides you with the federal income tax charitable deduction for donors that you can't get without being a 501c3 charity yourself. And just as Laura said, it's a hassle for many projects to do that. But sometimes if you're in the process, it takes a long time to get your own 501c3. You may choose to partner with an organization while you're in that process as well. So, there's a lot of different ways that fiscal sponsorship plays out. the main thing from our point of view, because it's a federal oversight program, is that the charity must show, that the charity is the 501c3, must show discretion and control over the money. And this is something that, is something to think about as you look at different ways of working with fiscal sponsors. Some of them will do it as a re-grant kind of an option where, and I think FC, I think you guys more or less do it like as a re-grant. Is that so the money would come in and then the organization grants that money to you, and then you track the funds. You are then responsible on your tax return for reporting all of that money. So that's one way to approach it. Our organization approaches it a little bit different way. When the funding comes in, we retain control of the funds. There is an administrative charge for our for the work that we do, but we actually pay out all of the bills for the project and administer the budget and the funds so that the tax burden rests on the organization. So it's a different kind of arrangement. And there are other kinds of fiscal sponsor arrangements. And they are, you have to really look, as you're thinking about fiscal sponsorship, you have to look and think about what suits your project. Because there are, different kinds of legal setups, and it is a legal arrangement. And there are legal agreements that you will be signing. So you really want to think carefully about how you want to be set up and what's the best fit for your project. So for us, when we take a look at a project, we're looking at how is your project going to be set up? In addition to, does it match our mission? Does it work for us? Does it work? Are we a good match with the story that you're telling and the work that you're doing? And if we are, then we look at is the way that we operate a good fit for you as well. So that is the overarching. I think those are the big picture items of how we work.
And can I ask, so you mentioned a little bit about two things there that I think we could get into a little bit more. One is in terms of the budget and the types of reports and those kinds of things. How does a filmmaker sort of plan for that? But I'm also thinking about just in terms of a filmmaker deciding if their project is an appropriate fit for fiscal sponsorship. So how would you advise, what are some of the questions if a filmmaker came to you and said, I'm interested in this, what would you be asking the filmmaker? I mean, obviously you both have applications, but just in a casual kind of conversation or something like this, what would be some of the things that you would say, check off these things in order to know that your project is an appropriate fit?
Laura, you want to go first?
Sure. And so do you mean an appropriate fit for fiscal sponsorship, Michele, or?
Maybe just an appropriate fit for fiscal sponsorship in general, and then an appropriate fit for Filmmakers Collaborative. Maybe those are two different things, right?
Okay. One of the things that we discuss with filmmakers is your fundraising plan. And so if you have a narrative film, for instance, that you are looking for fiscal sponsorship for, it's more difficult to raise grant funding for a narrative film because they're often not mission-based, but we do have some narrative films with a mission built into the storyline. And so maybe that's your plan. Like, I'm making a narrative film and the main character has autism. And so that's something that is potentially fundable because there are organizations out there that might be interested in supporting films about autism. Or maybe you have documentaries are sort of more clear cut in terms of what the subject matter is and where potential funding opportunities could be. And so these are the types of things we discuss. Sometimes people are making a short film and they want to do a fundraising campaign with friends and family. We've had people raise over $400,000 on a crowdfunding type campaign, you know, $25 to $2,500 at a time. And so these are discussions that we have with our filmmaker, our potential members before they come aboard, just so everybody's sort of on the same page in terms of what the timeline for how long do you think you want to give yourself to raise these funds? How much do you need to get to a certain milestone and then move on? Some people come and want to just start with trying to raise $20,000 or $25,000 to put together a fundraising reel or a trailer with a website or any combination. So we try to work as closely as possible, as early as possible with the filmmakers to just sort of help them put a plan together to move forward so they can be successful.
And I would echo, much of what Laura said. We work very similarly in looking at budgets, talking through what your fundraising strategy is. Also, since we are more focused mostly on documentary, we really also look at outreach and distribution and start to think very early on, what are your long-term goals for the project? And also, what are your personal goals for the project? I think it's really important for people to define right up front what their hopes are for the film, because you'll be putting in a huge amount of time and effort and energy, and understanding, and defining early on what your goals are with the film is really, really important. So those are the things that we look at. In terms of, matchup for fiscal sponsorship, you're looking at two film funders here, and obviously, if you're coming with a film project, that's probably going to be a natural matchup in terms of just the type of project that it is. But frankly, there are other kinds of fiscal sponsors that you might want to consider, as if you're deeply subject matter oriented. Perhaps that's a good fit for you. I think you really, it's important to just sort of think through, again, because of goals, what partners are best for your project, and what roles those different partners might play.
So that raises an important point too about the idea of the collaboration and the types of resources that you get access to when you're working with someone like, Center for Independent Documentary or Filmmakers Collaborative. So can you describe that a little bit? So obviously there's the money part of all of this, but you don't accept all projects, right? You're selective in deciding what projects are going to be an appropriate fit, and there's a reason for that, because you're working more closely with filmmakers on those projects. Can you talk a little bit about those extra things, or not extra, but those components of that partnership?
Well, I think you just said, one thing you just said that kind of struck me is that you are definitely working closely with people, and it is a partnership, and it's a real relationship. And so one of the things we look for in the fit is, are we going to make a good team? Can we really work together? I jokingly say, nice counts. We all need to get along. It's kind of like, it's a legal arrangement, it's a little bit like we're getting married here. And so we want to make sure that everyone's going to be able to communicate, and actually really work together. So once we do start working with you, we really try and be a full partner in the project, however we can help. And it's limited what we can do. Obviously, we have a limited amount of resources, but given that, we do look at cuts, give technical advice, give support through your fundraising and strategizing and actually implementing that. We read proposals. We help get proposals out there. We actually sometimes go and make pitches with you. So it's a wide range of support. We do rough cut screenings. We you know, we really want to get any kind of help we can, because we are a partner in the project, and once we get involved in it, we want to see you succeed. We do offer also, since COVID-19 has happened, we have a weekly meeting for our filmmakers, so that on Zoom they can talk about, you know, whatever. It's every Thursday afternoon. We have a wonderful meeting. People share their experiences. So part of it is also building a community, and that's important to us. In addition to that, you know, our filmmaker community, we also have this larger film community, which we're so lucky to have here in New England. I see DER is on here now too, and that's another awesome fiscal sponsor and organization, along with FC. So we also have, you know, one of the other things we do is try and work hard to build a better environment here in New England for our filmmakers.
Yeah, I would say that just connecting people is a big part of what we do. As you know, my background is at WGBH in production, and the woman that works with me here, Kathleen Chagru, her background is also in production at WGBH. And so I think if you were to look at our contract, it says we're fiscal sponsors, and our obligations and relationships focus excuse me, mostly on the funding part of what comes through. But it's just sort of an added benefit of working with people with production backgrounds, that we have sort of deep networks in the area that we love to try to connect people to. My favorite part of my job is when somebody asks me a question and I say, I have no idea, but let me connect you with this person.
What?
And they're able to, you know, either connecting to grant writers or to, if they need crew or things like that. And so what Susie says, it really is a pretty tight-knit filmmaking community here that has, that there are many ways in which we lift each other up. And I just feel like a conduit for allowing that to happen a lot. So.
I think that's really important. And, you know, one of the things that I've felt as being part of both your organizations is that, you know, there's also promotion that happens through the email newsletters that you send out and all of that. So it becomes, you do feel like you're part of a community, and that I think is an important aspect of the whole idea of becoming government. And I love Susie, what you said about being nice, because I think that emphasized enough. And, you know, I mean, filmmaking is a relationship industry, right? And having and sustaining connections among people is really important. And I think that anytime you're entering into some kind of relationship like this, you want to make sure that we're going to be able to work together. And if you're around and then you have a reputation for doing that, that's nobody's going to want to work, right? Yeah, right. So I really appreciate your emphasizing that too. And I do want to, when documentary educational research is topic on back on, but I'm going to see if they can chime in, because they are another organization that filmmakers can participate, partner with for sponsorship. So. And can you give an example of maybe a success story?
Michele?
Yeah.
I think we're having some audio difficulties.
Oh.
Are people having difficulty hearing me?
No.
Okay, so.
Well, you're garbled though.
Yes.
Know what you mean? Yeah. Sounds a little alienish.
Just switch to my built-in microphone.
There you go.
Okay.
That's better.
Use that. So yeah, maybe if you want to each use give us an example of maybe a recent project that you've worked on, or or maybe give some more specifics of like the type of grants or the specific grants, or types of campaigns that filmmakers run in order to then, kind of propel their fundraising forward.
Sure. Well, today is NEH deadline day, actually. NEH is National Endowment for the Humanities. So we have 2 proposals going in today. And then we had announcements today for that went out. The National Endowment for the Arts just announced their grants for what was put in last summer. It takes a whole year before you actually find out, but we got 2 grants from the ones we put in last summer, so we were very pleased about that. And so, we will work with filmmakers to put in grants to private foundations, to federal, state funding sources, humanities, arts councils, so a recent wonderful example would be the film Crip Camp. I don't know if any of you saw it. It was on Netflix. It had, an extensive outreach campaign that's surrounding it. In addition to getting funding from such federal sources as the National Endowment for the Humanities, it had state humanities money, it had private money, it had foundation money, and ultimately it also ended up becoming backed by Barack and Michelle Obama's film company and picked up by Netflix. So that's an example of a film that actually started out maybe 8 years ago with a very small idea that the filmmaker had, and said, I don't know, what do you think? You think we might get somewhere with this? We've got this footage of, my husband, he went to this camp when he was a kid, and we got this footage from when he was a kid. We want to make something. And it took a while, but their passion to make it happen, and, people caught on to that, grew, and they've got an amazing film. If you get a chance to see it, Netflix, it's wonderful.
Yeah. It is. I mean, they really do run the gamut, and they really can take a really, really long time. We have just an example on a smaller scale. We accept not only film projects, but also we have some apps and some web series that we support. And one of the apps is a project that started probably 3 or 4 years ago, but it's a facial recognition app. It's a media maker is developing, and so her project sort of lay dormant for a while. It's called the Algorithmic Justice League. Lay dormant for a while, but as you can imagine, has had a resurgence in fundraising for the past few weeks, and so sometimes it's things like that something will happen that will spark a new version of their campaign and breathe new life into the project, and bring you closer to that finish line. Our membership really runs the gamut. We have first-time filmmakers, and then we have a lot of projects that end up as part of either the American Experience on the PBS system, or through APT. They're distributed. But then we do have a lot of smaller first-time or new filmmakers that have done a great job raising the money that it takes to complete their projects as well.
So I might add that, so in like I said in the beginning, I've worked with both Filmmakers Collaborative and Center for Independent Documentary, and I've worked with them both on different projects. So as a filmmaker, I made the film Imagine Cole 37, which is a short film about 2 girls in an adventure playground in Berlin, Germany. And so I did fundraising for that film through Center for Independent Documentary. But then I also worked with Filmmakers Collaborative on funding for the online New England Film Festival and for New England Film. New England Film is both a really runaway success and like a pretty dismal failure at the same time in that, you know, it's hugely popular and it's been running for over 20 years, but it's been really challenging to eke out any kind of income from it. And so working with Filmmakers Collaborative allowed us to do some fundraising campaigns and again enabled, you know, people to be able to kind of donate to keep the site going. So and our online film festival, which is now in its 12th year, I think, which again is, you know, is much more of a labor of love than a business. So those are two very different kinds of projects, obviously, or three really. And then I have another documentary that I'm working with Center for Independent Documentary that will probably be like one of those stories that they're talking about where it's like 10 years later, the film is complete. Because I'm pretty much going at a snail's pace on it. But, and if you're interested in any of these projects, my website is MicheleMeek.com, and you can look into some more of those. And obviously I'll post all of everyone's website at the end here. I wanted to introduce also, because Jessica from Documentary Educational Resources is here, and they also do fiscal sponsorship. So Jessica, do you want to chime in and just kind of like talk about what DER does and how they work with filmmakers?
Yeah, sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy Wednesday. I'm happy to quickly talk about DER. Again, my name is Jessica. I'm the distribution and office manager at Documentary Educational Resources. And so DER is mostly known for their distribution program. So we distribute ethnographic documentaries for the educational space. In recent years, we have developed our fiscal sponsorship program, which is a lot more flexible. So similar to Center for Independent Documentary, and in Filmmakers Collaborative, we work with filmmakers on helping them fundraise and receive government or foundational support for their films. We're really flexible as far as the stories, as long as, you know, it's nonfiction. We really look at the filmmaking team, like the director and the producer, if they have, you know, what kind of experience do they have in this format of storytelling? Have they been able to successfully raise money on previous projects? We also work with filmmakers on their grants. We do not write the grants. We'll look over their proposals and provide any insight or feedback. And we also, similar to the other two organizations, we have film pages dedicated to each fiscal sponsoree and their projects, so people can donate directly through DER and receive tax deductible, you know, letters at the end of the year from us, like we do that for the filmmakers specifically, and any, you know, donors that you may get. So yeah, we both have we have distribution and a fiscal sponsorship program. And I'm sure Michele will share our website at the end. It's just www.der.org. And again, my name's Jessica.
Thanks, Jessica. It's good to see you. So can you all clarify too, I think, some of how the fees work specifically in this relationship? That's probably a little bit, you know, that's simple. But then the other question that I'm wondering, and I think filmmakers have questions about, is how do they position their film to be, you know, how do they put together a good quality application for fiscal sponsorship so that they can be successful, not only in getting fiscal sponsorship, but, you know, obviously in their kind of long range fundraising strategy?
So in terms of putting together a proposal, I would say a good place to start is the Common App. For those of you who are not familiar with it, there is a Common Core application that you can fill out that, you know, ultimately you'll use as a very good grant writing tool. It is, you know, a lot of funders accept it. And so it's a great way for you to put together a very solid description of your work and a solid budget. And yeah, great. Michelle's putting the link in for the Common App. So I would suggest that that's a really good place to start. It's certainly what we would, you know, we like, if we see that a good Common Core app, that's a good Common App is a good thing for us to be able to judge your project by, along with a good solid budget. And again, resumes, you know, who your team is, what your vision is with your team, how you're going to work together, and those are the basic things, I think, for us. Some people will, you know, will also do lookbooks, have some kind of a really solid video sample. If you're that far along, great. You don't have to be. Your previous work is great to see. In terms of fees, our organization is very simple. It's 5% of any funds that come in. We do charge, there is an administrative charge to manage the funds. The only other cost is that when we get credit card donations, the banks charge a 3.5% finance, you know, credit card processing fee. And so that gets passed on to the project. But those are the only fees.
Thank you.
So it's similar in terms of how we accept projects. We require a synopsis of the project, a budget, and your bio to be sent for evaluation. And mostly we use the budget and the synopsis to make sure that one is within the scope of the other in terms of what you hope to accomplish. If you submit a budget that seems really high for, you know, for a short film, and vice versa, we've seen the both. So we try to work with you to help you figure out if it's rare that we receive something and say, no, you know, don't come back. But it's common for us to receive information and work with the filmmaker, if they're amenable to it, to get to a place where a more realistic budget for us to be able to accept it. In terms of the experience level of the team, we always ask people to consider if nobody on the team has a great reel to share, or they haven't really gotten that far along yet, that we always think it's a good idea to try to get somebody on board, either in an executive producer role or as a consultant that does have experience, so we can sort of be reassured that as funding comes in, there's going to be somebody to sort of look over the shoulder of the filmmaker to just help them keep the budget and the production on track. In terms of fees, we also charge a 5% fee, a flat rate, and we use a fundraising platform that, as people donate online, they are given the option to cover the cost of the credit card fee. And over 90% of the time, they say yes. And so for the small percentage of times that they don't accept that, that's something that we'll absorb, because it's just easier for us because of a couple of other things that the fundraising platform does. As soon as somebody makes a donation to your project online, they receive an acknowledgement letter for their taxes saying, thank you for your donation, here's your acknowledgement letter. And you, the filmmaker, get an email with their contact info and the amount that they donated to the project. And we get an email with their contact information and the amount that they donated to their project. So we can automatically put it in your account with us. Other fees that we have are that when you first join, once your project is accepted, it's a $200 membership fee. And that it gives you the place on our website that I just discussed, but also access to the webinars which have become webinars, workshops, webinars, rough cut screenings, and things like that throughout the year. But that's it.
And can you both clarify this? I don't think you said this already, but are you working with filmmakers, obviously in New England, but also outside of New England?
Yes, our filmmakers are from all over the country. I would say maybe about 30% are here in New England, and the rest are from another big amount out on the West Coast in the San Francisco Bay Area, and then some New York, and then scattered. We actually have, I think, 7 or 8 filmmakers in Hawaii. So they're all over the place.
Yeah, same. We actually had a filmmaker today submit to the NEH from Bangladesh. He's just happened to go visit family in March and hasn't been able to leave, but he's British. So we have mostly, the distribution is probably similar to Susi's in terms of throughout the United States, but we have a couple in Canada and we have a couple in Great Britain. So it depends upon what their funding stream is going to be for their project. But yeah, it's fun.
So for filmmakers who are aspiring to get some of those bigger grants, like you mentioned the NEH or like, you know, the NEA or some of these grants, I mean, I think you can't just like come out of nowhere and apply for those grants, right? So can you talk a little bit about just in terms of like setting the expectations of like, okay, you're ready, you're making your film, you have an idea, you have a budget, you put this stuff together. And one clarification is that would you say that the Common app is appropriate for fiction filmmakers to use as well? Or is that, I mean, I know it's for documentary, but does it kind of help you as a narrative filmmaker come up with the questions of?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think I know it's definitely appropriate for documentary filmmakers. I would say that probably some of the key questions in that app are applicable for fiction filmmakers in that, you know, you need a short summary of your film. You need to have like a description of why this isn't a compelling, you know, issue. And like you were both saying, you know, a fiction film for a filmmakers collaborative could be a fit, but it has to have some topic orientation that makes it an appropriate film that would, you know, be something that you could get grants for, et cetera. So let's talk about the stepping stone of kind of being able to get those big grants. So how does one, you know, go from just starting out and applying to one of you or, you know, for fiscal sponsorship and then working their way up to those bigger grants?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. The NEH grants are a bear. But as Susie was saying, with the Common app, anything, whether it's a narrative film, web series, whatever, anything that makes you sit down and really focus, drill down on what is this? Who is the audience? Why am I making this? And that's sort of the benefit of doing a lot of grant applications, because by the time you start to make the film, I feel like that's the easy part. Like, because you know it's so cold, it's so crystal clear in your mind as to what footage you need to get, and you know how you want things to look and sound and feel. And so that's why those exercises are really good. The NEH, you know, each NEH and National Science Foundation, National Endowment for the Arts, they have very specific needs that need to be filled for each grant. And so if you don't have a really strong humanities thread throughout your project, then the NEH is not something that you're going to want to go after. And then the NEA grants have very specific, you know, topics as well. And so your goal is to just make sure that you're talking to the sweet spot of whoever your funder is, in order to set yourself up to get, you know, for a positive outcome. Yeah, I mean, the NEH makes you, for a production grant, makes you submit a script for a documentary you haven't shot yet. And so so I don't know, it's sort of miraculous, but there's some really amazing films out there and really amazing filmmakers, and that's why.
I totally agree with everything that Laura just said. And, I think, again, it's really knowing, just as Laura said, it's really knowing what your vision is for your film, how you're going to make it come about. And staying passionate and open about it as you work through the whole process, because it takes a long time. And it takes a long time to figure out all of the different streams of funding and that you might possibly fit in, and to get at each one. So you have to be patient, and you have to stay passionate, and you have to keep developing your craft. And that's your writing craft as well as your whatever you're going to be showing. So especially as you move further, into the bigger film funders, you will need a very strong sample to be competitive. And really working on that is an important thing as well. So, thinking about the materials that you'll use to raise those funds is critical.
Yeah. And thinking about, things that seem to come at the end, like your distribution plan and your marketing and your outreach. Jessica can tell you more about this, but that should start day one.
Day one.
Because why go through the process of making a film if then at the end you're like, do you know what I mean? It's sort of like having a baby and then walking away. So you need to have a plan for how you're going to watch that baby grow and mature and get out into the world, because that's really the goal.
Yeah.
And so it is a really long process, but there's a lot of great examples to follow out there. But yeah, think of fundraising as building your audience, because everybody that contributes to your project is going to want to see it finished, and then watch it and share the news, and so, but definitely leave money in your budget for marketing and distribution, and also start to have a plan for that as soon as possible.
I think that's such an important point. I mean, I think, there's a lot kind of written and spoken about in terms of the distribution and the marketing really has to be something that you're thinking about from the beginning. And the fundraising is part of that, because your audience building, you're getting a committed group of sort of passionate followers who believe in your cause. And this was one of the exciting things when Kickstarter and Indiegogo were like at its peak. I feel like that's kind of not as popular anymore, but that was what was really exciting about it, is not just the money that you could raise for your films, but the community building that you were able to do on issue-based documentaries or feature or narrative films, even short films. But there are still other ways of doing that through, social media. I mean, I see a lot of filmmakers who are launching campaigns on social media, launching websites before the film is done. So they're able to, start collecting email addresses of people who want updates, and keeping people involved in the process. And all that is really important, because then you're establishing your fan base as you kind of go along. Lily had a question about how to kind of put your team together. And I think this is kind of a good question, and maybe even one I have. I tend to like just do everything. And that's not always like the greatest approach, right? So what, and obviously when you're talking about doing fundraising, especially applying for grants, right? They want to see that you've put together a team. Some grants, like a local, maybe Rhode Island Council on the Arts grant, or Mass Council on the Arts, I'm forgetting what it's exactly called, but the local grants will probably do a single filmmaker, fund a single filmmaker, but otherwise they're really looking for teams, right? So how do you connect with people and put those teams together, and what are you looking for in those team members?
Do you want to? Okay, you can go, Suze.
Okay, sure. So finding a team, all right, so this is, Lily, where are you located? First off, that would be probably useful to know. And what, what kind of circles you find yourself in, and where you put yourself. But I think you might, if you don't know people, the first thing you're going to want to do is try and find some partners, some people to work with you. Talking to people like a fiscal sponsor, we can come up with some ideas for you. But I think, finding other filmmakers for you to talk to and meet might be a really great thing. So I would say, if you're not familiar with the Mass Production Coalition, for
Yeah, I was
example.
just going to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the MPC is a terrific Boston-based. It's an organization that is across not just it involves the corporate community, narrative film, businesses. Everyone is sort of involved in it, and there are quarterly meetings that would be really helpful for you to come to, so that you could meet people. Women in Film is another, you might want to align yourself with some of the organizations that, help people network and, meet people that way.
Yeah, that's a great idea. You just have to put yourself out there, because they're there. I didn't hear the answer to your question, to Susie's question about where you are, Lily, but wherever you are, you do have to put yourself out there, and maybe step out of your comfort zone or not, and just start looking for partners, and start looking, no matter what avenue or what aspect of your film you need help in. There are people out there, and at events like what the MPC puts on, people are pretty generous with their advice, at least, and pointing you in the right direction. And we live, in a city that has some of the best schools in the country of higher education. And so the students coming out are spectacular. And so maybe that's where you look to build your team. It depends. I don't know what you're thinking of, but that's an option as well. Oh, and Film Fatales. Yes, Mira.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, those are all great suggestions. I mean, normally I would say, go out to events and start meeting people, but obviously that's not happening as much anymore right now. But I think there's still a lot of opportunity at virtual events to connect with people. And, New England Film, we have the Facebook group where you can join, you can post and say, I'm looking for collaborators. This is my project, and see who you meet. That we also have an industry directory where people post their kind of services and their profiles, so you could browse that. And we also have the jobs and opportunity section where you can post, actual paid positions, but you also can post looking for collaborators. That is one of the options. So obviously always have to be really careful when you do open calls for that and anywhere. I mean, most of the time I usually, if I'm working closely with someone, want to have, it's like that old joke, like when you look in the paper, that's like the last way to find a job. It's kind of like that, where you're really, mostly we're looking to try to find someone we know, or then someone who knows someone we know to collaborate with, because like Susie said, you're entering into a relationship with someone when you bring them onto your team, and that's pretty serious. And if we had one of our, resident attorney, entertainment attorneys here, I'm sure they would be saying you should be having a contract with anyone that you bring onto your team. Yes. Because it's all going great until it's not going great. And then if you don't have things clearly in writing, then there's suddenly an argument about who owns what, and et cetera. And that can be really difficult, but I think, setting out a clear kind of boundaries of what if the film does make money? What if, it does get picked up for distribution? How is the money going to be kind of doled out in situations like that? Those are conversations that you just have to have with people that you're bringing onto your team.
Yeah. AO had a question about just, I think in this similar thread, young filmmakers and academics. Definitely go to the Mass Production Coalition website because they've recently created something called the Higher Ed Consortium. That is just that. It's filmmakers currently in college and a group of being paired with a group of professionals talking to them about next steps. The goal being to not graduate from a school in Massachusetts and then hit the road for New York or LA when we actually have a pretty thriving production world here in the Boston area and would like you to stay and work here. Filmmakers Collaborative also puts on each year the Boston International Kids Film Festival. And we've actually screened Jim's film and Michelle's film. Jim's film won. Jim, your film won, right? Didn't it?
You might be muted.
Oh, okay.
You can chime in, Jim, if you want.
Yeah, and actually, I won the NewEnglandFilm.com film festival too.
Sweet.
All
right.
So both.
All right. We got you surrounded.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. It was a wonderful film festival.
Yeah, and so film festivals are also, I think, another great place to go if you're looking for
Definitely.
Yeah, I love them because there's filmmakers walking around all over the place at those. So, and we have plenty of them as soon as, eventually we'll have plenty of them again.
Yeah, and film festivals, not only at the screenings, but there often are a lot of panel discussions and workshops and things like that that happen at those festivals that enable you to kind of connect with people in the audience or, even connect with panelists. I mean, one of the things that I have always loved so much about New England versus places like New York and California is that, when you go to these events, like it's just, people are a lot more approachable in general. And you feel like, wow, I just spoke to the head of whatever this organization. And that doesn't happen as quickly in places like New York and LA. So Mira also posted that the D Word is another great online community and way to meet other documentary filmmakers. Thank you for that. So I think,
and I should just say that Mira, who is, you can't see there, but Mira is our director of operations. So she's also a terrific resource for people if you have questions.
Right, and I highly recommend, I'm going to share this screen. I'm happy to still take some more questions, but let me share this screen with all the links to everyone. This is just so that everyone can get in touch and make sure to sign up for email newsletters, et cetera, from all of these organizations, especially if you're looking to make connections. And each of these, it'll help you keep in touch with what's happening in the local film community, and learn about workshops that each of these organizations are doing, and films that they're working with, and it will help you. The first step is always a little bit of kind of research of understanding what are the types of films that this organization is working with and promoting and are successful, and that's going to help you kind of have a better idea of how your film might fit in, or which organization your film might be an appropriate match for.
Thank you very much, Michelle, and everybody.
Thank you all for coming. And I think what we're trying to do is have a little bit more workshops like this going forward, and doing them as a combination of a Zoom and maybe a Facebook Live. We did a survey on Facebook to see what were some of the topics that people were most interested in, and this was the #1 topic. So we decided to start with this, but there are a number of other topics that were kind of seem to be pretty popular. So we're gonna kind of go to those next. We do have one question here. Are there any concerns when accepting donations from international donors, and what could we offer international donors? as tax incentive or tax? How does that work? Because obviously the tax deductible donation is for US only, correct?
Right, that's correct.
Yep.
That's correct. You can offer them a thank you.
Right. Big
You
thank
can
you.
offer them a
Nice
credit.
credit, maybe a little bit bigger than
Thanks.
everybody else's.
Yeah. That's about it.
Yeah. Sometimes I've seen filmmakers, this goes back to the whole Kickstarter campaigns. What were people offering then, right? Because they weren't giving people tax deductible donations necessarily. So they were giving, like you said, credit in the film. They were giving early access to the film, an invitation to a private screening, you know, not that that would help for an international person, but maybe early digital access or, you know, guaranteed digital access to the film when it's released, those kinds of things. So this is a pretty broad question.
I know that.
How do you think the industry will change for indie filmmakers after COVID? The question we're all trying to figure out, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to be radically different I think there's great opportunity at this moment, as strange as that sounds, but we are seeing the change in distribution environment that that kind of, you know, change and disruption that we haven't seen before in any other way. And so how will that play out for filmmakers? I think it depends on how we all organize, on how we participate in making change happen that's beneficial to you all and your work. So I think there's opportunity. You know, it's that yin yang thing, that moment. How will we seize it? We'll find out, you know, but I think it is going to be different. I think the change in film festivals is just the beginning. What we're seeing with movie theaters is going to be a radical change. I think the activism and the way that we all connect in new ways online, like Zoom, we watch things differently now. We're learning new ways to do that, and we're doing different kinds of outreach campaigns. So I think all of these things are exciting changes, moments to, you know, to learn from, as difficult as they are. You know, how will it change production itself? I think there'll be more
Efficient.
I think that will change as well.
It'll be more efficient, I think.
I think so too.
Yep.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that, efficient?
Well, the crews will be smaller.
Okay.
You know, directors necessarily don't have to be on set. I've just today was hearing about directors working remotely. But it is really a time, I think, for independent filmmakers to shine as well, because at the end of the day, we're storytellers, and there's no important stories to tell than what's going on in the world right now, as is always the case. But I just think to document events, it's why I feel so proud to do what I do, because I get to help get these important stories out into the world. And whether it's by making people laugh when they need to laugh, or by informing them of, you know, something hard that they don't want to see, but we're going to show it to you in a you know, sensitive and a smart way. I think there's definitely opportunity for everybody. So keep working. Yeah.
I will say too that one of the things that I'm kind of excited to see, since I've been running an online film festival for the past 12 years, is a little bit more openness to the idea of screening films online.
Right.
I mean, I'm the first one to say that I love seeing a film in a theater, don't get me wrong, but you know, some of these kind of really hardline policies that festivals have had, where if it's screened online, like it's dead to me now, has been pretty harsh, I think. And opening the door to like, okay, just because X number of people have seen it online doesn't mean that it has no value in the market or to an audience ever again. Like, that's just not accurate. And so I'm really excited at the prospect of seeing pushback on that. which is really the first time that I've seen since we've been running the festival any kind of movement towards being more accepting to online screenings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly say that sorry for ending on such a large question.
We have the next topic.
Yeah, that's like its own.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've just noticed, I'm sure that the rest of you have noticed with the many webinars, whether it be Doc NYC, Sundance, it's just, it keeps coming up, and I couldn't agree with all of you more, but especially your point, Laura, about more efficient teams, you know, and especially during production. So yeah, like there isn't, if we ever were questioning to be in this industry, like this is it. These are the stories we have to tell, and you know, we can't stop. And I'm happy about New England Film and you know, the rest of these organizations that have really been supportive of one another. And this is an even more essential time to stick together and continue to support each other, whether it be as organizations and also as filmmakers. So thank you.
I would like to add too that Jessica is won the the first New England Film Star Award that we partnered with Women in Film Video New England last year to give, and we had a bunch of sponsors, and so she's actually working on a documentary project. And do you want to just mention what it is, Jessica?
So thank you, Michele. So the film series, the working title is called Black Women Shine. And I'm highlighting 4 different Black women in the city of Boston that have been doing really incredible work within the arts, civic engagement, and mental health spaces. And so I got through about maybe 30% of production. Michele and I were just talking about this last week. And so production has been paused because of COVID. And it's caused, in a good way, ways for me to think more creatively about finishing the series, how to do it. But one of the women in particular, her name is Catherine Morris. She's the founder of Boston's Music and Arts Soul Film Fest, or Music Festival, also known as BAMS Fest. And originally they were going to have the big music festival around Juneteenth next week. But because that's like an outdoor music festival, you know, everything is shut down for the summer. So they are postponing until June of 2021, which completely changes my production timeline and my marketing and distribution plans. But it's not necessarily a bad thing because, again, like I was saying, it really forces all of us to think more creatively about how to complete our projects. So thanks, Michele.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Thank you.
I know, that sounds great.
I think in general, you know, it's about maintaining flexibility with everything, because the fact of the matter is that filmmaking is almost always a labor of love, especially if you're talking about independent filmmaking. So, you know, thinking about how you're going to be able to stay in the game during this time of sort of everything kind of this upheaval, I guess, is important, because if you really want to be in it for the long term, then you're going to have to think about how can I stay relevant even though I'm not able to do the things I thought I was going to be able to do this year, whether it's getting your film in the film festivals you thought, or, you know, doing the production that you thought you were going to be doing. There are other ways, you know, everyone is in a position where they have to think about how to pivot. And the people that pivot kind of with purpose are going to be the ones that benefit the most from you know, this kind of strange time. And I think that openness is there, and you know, people are looking for stories and connections, maybe even more now than they were. And so that's an opportunity for all of us as makers and storytellers to make those kinds of connections now.